The first thing everyone told me on move-in day was one warning. Don't get your hopes up. Nobody gets to room with Ethan Brooks. Ethan wasn't just another student. He was the college's golden boy, football captain, dean's favorite, campus heartthrob. Every guy wanted to be his friend, and every girl wanted him to notice them. So imagine my shock when I opened my dorm room and found Ethan Brooks already sitting on the bed, smiling at me like he'd been waiting. Then he said something that made my heart stop. Finally, you're here. I had never met him before. So, how did he already know my name? The first thing I noticed about Westbridge University wasn't the towering brick buildings or the students rushing between classes. It was the way everyone seemed to be talking about the same person. Did you see Ethan this morning? I heard he scored the winning touchdown last weekend. My roommate says he's on the dean's honor list again. I'd do anything just to have one class with him. As I stood in line to collect my dorm key, I couldn't help overhearing every conversation. No matter where I looked, the name Ethan Brooks kept coming up. I had just transferred from a small community college in Oregon. At 22, I wasn't looking for popularity or excitement. My only goal was simple: finish my business degree, stay out of trouble, and maybe make a few genuine friends along the way. I wasn't the kind of person who attracted attention. I liked quiet mornings, old books, black coffee, and headphones that blocked out the world. Popularity had never interested me. When the housing office handed me my dorm assignment, the woman behind the desk smiled in a strange way. "Dorm Hall C," she said. "Room 314. Then she looked at her computer one more time before adding, "Interesting. What is?" She quickly shook her head. "Nothing. Enjoy your semester." It was an odd response, but I figured she was just having a long day. Dragging 2 heavy suitcases across campus under the warm September sun wasn't exactly how I'd imagined my first afternoon. Students laughed on the lawns. Music drifted from open windows. Orientation volunteers waved colorful signs toward different buildings. Everything felt alive. Everything except me. I still felt like an outsider walking through someone else's story. By the time I reached Hall C, sweat covered my forehead, and my arms ached from carrying luggage. I climbed 3 flights of stairs before stopping in front of room 314. The hallway buzzed with students introducing themselves to new roommates. Some rooms echoed with loud laughter. Others were already decorating. I took a slow breath. Here goes. Sliding the key into the lock, I pushed the door open. The room was already half organized. One side looked completely finished. Books lined the shelves. A football helmet sat neatly on the desk. A guitar leaned against the wall. Someone had even placed a small green plant on the windowsill. Then I noticed him. A young man sat casually on one of the beds, wearing jeans and a Navy college hoodie. His athletic build was impossible to miss, but it wasn't intimidating. Messy dark blonde hair fell slightly over his forehead. Warm blue eyes met mine. The moment he saw me, his face softened into the kind of smile that felt unexpectedly familiar. He stood up immediately. "There you are." I froze. He walked over without hesitation and held out his hand. "Welcome home, Noah." My heart skipped. I stared at him. "How? Do you know my name?" For a split second, something flashed across his face.
Surprise.
Then relief. Then he chuckled softly. "I checked the housing portal." Oh, that made sense, didn't it? Still, there was something about the way he'd said my name, like he'd practiced it. "I'm Ethan," he said, "as if I haven't heard that name 50 times today." He laughed. "That obvious? You have no idea." His laugh was warm, genuine, and completely different from the arrogant image I'd imagined after hearing everyone talk about him. Instead of showing off, he grabbed one of my suitcases before I could protest. "I've got this. You don't have to." Too late. Within minutes, he was helping me unpack as though we'd known each other for years. He somehow guessed exactly where I'd want my books. He handed me hangers before I even asked. When I searched for an extension cord, he pulled one from a drawer. "I figured we'd need an extra." I blinked. "You really planned ahead." He rubbed the back of his neck. I guess I did. The afternoon passed surprisingly quickly. Conversation came easily. We talked about classes, favorite movies, terrible cafeteria food, and our hometowns. He listened more than he spoke. Whenever I shared something, he paid complete attention. Not once did he glance at his phone. That alone made him different from most people I'd met. A loud knock interrupted us. 3 students stepped into the doorway. The moment they saw Ethan helping fold my clothes, they stopped talking. One of them frowned. Dude, you're unpacking? Ethan smiled casually. Looks like it. You've got to be kidding. What? I thought you said you didn't want a roommate. I changed my mind. The 3 exchanged confused looks. One of them glanced at me, then back at Ethan. Whatever, man. Football meeting in 20 minutes. I'll be there. As soon as they left, silence filled the room. What was that about? I asked. Ethan shrugged. They're dramatic. I wasn't convinced. Their expressions hadn't looked dramatic. They'd looked shocked. Later that evening, while Ethan was at football practice, curiosity got the better of me. I headed downstairs to grab a soda from the vending machines. 2 students were talking near the entrance. I still don't get it. Nobody does. Ethan rejected every roommate request. I know. He even turned down the team captain last semester. So why him? The second student lowered his voice. That's what everyone wants to know. I realized they were talking about me. Before they noticed I was standing nearby, I quietly walked away. My stomach tightened. Why would someone as popular as Ethan choose to share a room with a complete stranger? Maybe there had been some mistake. Maybe housing had forced him. But nothing about his behavior suggested that. If anything, he seemed genuinely happy I was there. That night, Ethan returned carrying 2 paper bags. Dinner. You bought food. I figured we'd both be too tired to find a restaurant. Inside were burgers, fries, and chocolate milkshakes. My favorite, I said without thinking. His smile lingered for just a second longer than usual. I know. I looked up. You know? He immediately corrected himself. I mean, most people like chocolate. Oh, again, a perfectly reasonable explanation. Yet something still felt off. After dinner, we sat by the window watching the campus lights come alive. Students crossed the courtyard below. Music echoed faintly from another dorm. For a while, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. Eventually, I yawned. Long day. You should get some sleep. As I stood up, I accidentally bumped into him. Instinctively, he caught my wrist before I lost my balance. For a brief moment, neither of us moved. His hand was warm, his expression unreadable. Then he slowly let go. You okay? Yeah. I smiled awkwardly. Guess I'm more tired than I thought. He smiled back. Good night, Noah. Good night. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of Ethan's phone vibrating. The room was dark except for the faint glow from his desk lamp. Thinking he hadn't heard it, I turned over. Before closing my eyes again, I heard his quiet voice. No. A pause. He doesn't remember me. Silence. I know. Another pause. I'm not going to tell him yet. My eyes opened completely. Who didn't I remember? And why did it sound like he had been waiting a very long time for me to walk into room 314? Morning sunlight spilled through the dorm window, painting thin golden lines across the floor. For a few quiet seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. Westbridge University. Room 314. And Ethan Brooks. He was already awake. Dressed in a gray t-shirt and athletic shorts, he stood by the tiny coffee maker balancing 2 mugs. Good morning, he said with an easy smile. I figured you'd need coffee. I blinked. How did you know I drink coffee first thing in the morning? He froze for the smallest moment before shrugging. Lucky guess. I laughed. I guess you're lucky. But deep down, I wasn't sure it was luck anymore. There were too many little moments. He always seemed to know exactly what I needed before I said anything. He remembered things I'd only mentioned once. He could tell when I was tired without asking. It was thoughtful, almost too thoughtful. Over the next 2 weeks, college life settled into a routine. We walked to class together nearly every morning. Even though our schedules were different, Ethan somehow managed to appear outside my classroom just as I finished. "Perfect timing," he'd say. "Ready for lunch?" At first, I thought it was coincidence. After the 5th day, I wasn't so sure. One afternoon, I was carrying a stack of library books when someone bumped into me from behind. The books scattered across the sidewalk. Before I could kneel down, another pair of hands was already gathering them. "You okay?" Of course. It was Ethan. "I swear." I laughed. "You keep showing up like a superhero." He smiled while handing me the last book. "Maybe your timing is just really predictable." His answer made me smile, but it also left another unanswered question. How did he always know where I was? That Friday, Ethan invited me to watch football practice. "I'll make you a deal," he said. "You watch one practice, and I'll sit through one of those 3-hour documentaries you like." I laughed. "That's a terrible deal for you." "I know." The stadium buzzed with energy. Students filled the bleachers while music echoed across the field. The moment Ethan stepped onto the grass, the entire atmosphere changed. Everyone greeted him. Coaches respected him. Teammates listened to him. He wasn't loud. He wasn't arrogant. People simply trusted him. Watching him lead the team made me understand why everyone admired him. Not because he was the best player, because he made everyone around him feel important. During a break, he looked toward the stands. Our eyes met. He smiled. Just one small smile. Yet somehow it felt like I was the only person in the stadium. A girl sitting nearby noticed. "Oh my gosh." Her friend nudged her. "I think Ethan just smiled at you." "No," she whispered excitedly. "He was definitely smiling at that guy." They glanced toward me. I quickly looked away. After practice, Ethan jogged over. "So, you were incredible." His ears turned slightly pink. "Thanks. I've never seen someone encourage every teammate like that. My coach taught me leadership isn't about being the loudest. It shows." For some reason, his compliment meant more to me than I expected. A few days later, rumors swept across campus. "Ethan's dating someone. I heard she's a model." "No, she's a cheerleader." They looked so happy together. I told myself it didn't matter. We were just roommates. Friends. Nothing more. Still, every rumor landed like a tiny stone in my chest. I hated the feeling. I didn't even know why. The answer arrived sooner than I expected. Leaving the student center one afternoon, I spotted Ethan near the fountain. A beautiful young woman threw her arms around him in a warm hug. He hugged her back. They laughed together. She gently fixed his hair. Then she kissed his cheek. I stopped walking. Something inside me quietly sank. Without thinking, I turned around and walked in the opposite direction. The rest of the day felt strangely empty. Back at the dorm, Ethan noticed immediately. "You've been quiet." "I'm just tired." "You sure?" "Yeah." He studied my face for a second but didn't push. That evening, there was another knock at our door. When Ethan opened it, the same young woman stood outside holding 2 coffee cups. She smiled brightly. "There you are." Then she noticed me. "You must be Noah." I nodded politely. She walked over and shook my hand. "I'm Emily." Before I could respond, she laughed. "And before campus invents another rumor." She pointed at Ethan. "This idiot is my cousin." Ethan sighed dramatically. "I told you people would assume things. They always do." Heat rushed into my face. I had never felt so relieved, or so embarrassed. Emily glanced between us with a playful smile. "You two already look like brothers." Ethan quickly looked away. For some reason, that answer seemed to disappoint him. Emily stayed for only a few minutes before leaving. As soon as the door closed, Ethan looked at me. "Were you really upset earlier?" "What?" "You've barely looked at me all afternoon." "I was just tired." He smiled gently. "If you say so." He didn't argue, but somehow I felt like he knew I wasn't telling the truth. The following Monday brought another mystery. When I returned from class, a small bouquet of white daisies rested outside our dorm room. There wasn't a name, only a handwritten note. Keep smiling. I looked up and down the hallway. No one. Inside the room, Ethan sat reading. Did you see who left these? He glanced at the flowers.
No.
You sure? He nodded. Maybe you have a secret admirer. I laughed. I seriously doubt that. He smiled behind his book. Don't underestimate yourself. I placed the flowers in a glass of water near the window. For days I wondered who had sent them. I never found out. Midterms arrived faster than anyone expected. Stress covered the entire campus. Students barely slept. Coffee became everyone's closest friend. One evening, after hours in the library, I returned to the dorm exhausted. I reached for my headphones. One side didn't work. They finally gave up. I sighed. I've had these for years. I can probably fix them. I looked at Ethan. You know electronics? A little. It's okay. I'll try. The next morning, I forgot all about the broken headphones. After class, I picked them up from my desk. Music played perfectly. Both sides. I looked toward Ethan. You fixed them. He shrugged. It wasn't hard. When you were sleeping, you stayed up fixing these? They mattered to you. His answer was simple, matter of fact, like it wasn't a big deal. But it was. No one had ever quietly done something so thoughtful for me. Thank you, I said softly. His smile was worth more than the repair itself. One Saturday evening, the campus organized an outdoor movie night. Students spread blankets across the lawn. Popcorn filled the air with its buttery smell. Ethan and I found a quiet spot near the back. Halfway through the movie, the temperature dropped. Without saying anything, Ethan placed his hoodie beside me. You'll get cold. What about you? I'll survive. I slipped it on. It smelled faintly of cedarwood and fresh laundry. Comforting. Safe. By the time the movie ended, I had accidentally leaned against his shoulder. Neither of us moved. Neither of us mentioned it. We simply watched the final scene together beneath the stars. Walking back to the dorm, I realized something that scared me. I wasn't just happy around Ethan anymore. I looked forward to every conversation, every shared meal, every stupid joke, every quiet moment. Somewhere along the way, my best friend had quietly become the person I thought about most. I didn't know what that meant, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. A few nights later, Ethan left for a late football strategy meeting. I stayed behind to study. While searching for a notebook in the shared closet, a small cardboard box slipped from the top shelf and landed on the floor. Its lid popped open. Old papers scattered across the carpet. As I gathered everything back together, one photograph slid beneath my desk. I reached down and picked it up. The moment I turned it over, my breath caught. It was an old photograph of two boys at what looked like a summer camp. One of them was unmistakably Ethan. The other was me. We couldn't have been more than 12 years old. My arm rested across Ethan's shoulder. Both of us were smiling like lifelong friends. But no matter how hard I searched my memory, I couldn't remember that day, or that photograph, or Ethan. The bedroom door suddenly clicked open behind me. The bedroom door clicked shut behind me. I turned so quickly that the photograph nearly slipped from my fingers. Ethan stopped in the doorway, still wearing his football jacket. His eyes landed on the picture, and all the color drained from his face. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. You found it, he said quietly. I didn't mean to go through your things. I know. He set his backpack on the floor and walked over slowly. His eyes never left the photograph. I've been wondering when this moment would happen. I looked down at the faded picture again. The two boys in it looked genuinely happy. One was obviously me. The other was Ethan. I don't remember this, I admitted. I've tried. I know. You know? He nodded. You weren't pretending. A heavy silence settled between us. Finally, I looked at him. Who were we? Ethan pulled out his desk chair and sat down, staring at the floor for several seconds before speaking. When we were 12, Our parents signed us up for the same summer leadership camp in Colorado. I searched my memory. Nothing. I don't remember ever going to Colorado. You only stayed a week. He smiled sadly. I stayed the whole summer. I sat across from him, holding the photograph carefully. What happened? Ethan took a slow breath. I was awkward back then. He laughed softly. Actually, awkward doesn't even begin to describe it. I wasn't always this confident. It was hard to imagine. The other boys made fun of me because I wasn't good at sports yet. I was quiet, nervous, and an easy target. His voice remained calm, but I could hear the old hurt beneath it. One afternoon, a few older campers cornered me behind one of the cabins. I frowned. They started shoving me around. He looked at me with a gentle smile. And then you showed up. Me? You didn't even know me. He laughed quietly. You just walked over and told them to leave me alone. I did. They laughed at you. His smile grew warmer. But you didn't move. I stared at him, trying desperately to remember. Nothing came. You stood between me and them. His eyes became distant, almost as if he were watching the memory instead of telling it. You said something I've never forgotten. What? If someone has to stand alone, then I'll stand with him. My chest tightened. I said that. You did. He nodded. They left. And after that, we became friends. He chuckled. The best week of that summer. His gaze drifted back to the photograph. We ate every meal together. We built ridiculous blanket forts. You convinced everyone to play capture the flag. You even traded desserts with me because chocolate gave me headaches back then. I smiled without realizing it. I really don't remember. I know. His smile didn't disappear. The last day, your parents came early. You left before I woke up. He reached into the cardboard box and carefully pulled out another folded piece of paper. I kept this. He handed it to me. The paper was old and slightly wrinkled. In uneven 12-year-old handwriting were a few simple words. You're braver than you think. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Noah. I stared at it in disbelief. I wrote this. You folded it into my backpack before you left. He smiled. I didn't find it until I got home. My throat suddenly felt tight.
I'm sorry.
For what? For forgetting. He shook his head immediately. You don't have anything to apologize for. But you remembered everything. Some memories become part of who you are. His voice softened. You changed my life in 1 week. Neither of us spoke for a while. Outside, students laughed as they crossed the courtyard. Inside our room, everything felt strangely still. Finally, I asked the question that had been bothering me since move-in day. How did we end up roommates? Ethan let out a quiet sigh. When college admissions opened, I saw your name on the accepted student list. You searched for me? I wasn't even sure it was the same Noah. So I looked at the student photo. He smiled. It was. You requested this room. He nodded once. I requested you as my roommate. I stared at him. Months before assignments were finalized. Why didn't you tell me? Because I realized almost immediately that you didn't remember me. He looked away. I didn't want you to feel guilty. So you just... I wanted one chance to know the person who once changed my life. The sincerity in his voice left me speechless. I wasn't trying to trick you. I just hoped. He hesitated. That maybe we'd become friends again. I smiled faintly. I think we already are. His eyes brightened. I'd like to think so. For the next several days, everything between us felt lighter. Now that I understood why Ethan had always seemed strangely familiar, all those little thoughtful moments finally made sense. He hadn't been guessing. He had simply remembered the kind boy from years ago. One afternoon, while walking across campus, several football players called Ethan over. I'll catch up, he told me. I'll meet you at the library.
No rush.
I headed toward the library alone. As I reached the entrance, I realized I'd forgotten my student ID. Turning back, I decided to return to the athletic center. Before stepping inside, I heard familiar voices. One of Ethan's teammates laughed. So, your plan actually worked. Another answered. I honestly didn't think he'd fall for it. I stopped walking. Someone asked, you planned this whole roommate thing for years? Ethan replied quietly. I asked for the same room. The others laughed. Dude, that's commitment. Another voice added jokingly. Guess you finally paid back your childhood hero. Paid back. The words echoed inside my head. Childhood hero. So that was it. Everything. The kindness. The flowers. The coffee. The late-night conversations. The repaired headphones. None of it had been because Ethan genuinely cared about who I was now. He was simply repaying an old debt. Trying to balance the scales. I quietly stepped away before anyone noticed me. For the rest of the afternoon, I couldn't focus. Every happy memory suddenly felt different. Maybe I had misunderstood everything. Maybe I'd been imagining something that had never existed. When Ethan knocked on the library table an hour later, I forced a smile. Ready. I actually have some reading to finish. You can study in the room. I'd rather stay here. His smile faded slightly. Oh, I'll see you later. That evening, dinner was unusually quiet. The next morning, I left before he woke up. The day after that, I stayed on campus until late. Little by little, I built a distance between us. Ethan noticed. Of course he noticed. One evening, he finally asked, did I do something wrong?
No.
You've barely looked at me all week. I've just been busy. That's not true. His voice remained calm. You've been avoiding me. I couldn't meet his eyes. Maybe we're just getting used to college. He looked hurt. I don't believe that. Neither of us raised our voices. Neither of us argued. The silence between us hurt far more than shouting ever could. A few days later, another rumor spread across campus. Someone from the student council apparently had a crush on Ethan. I saw them together outside the administration building. They handed Ethan a small gift bag. I didn't stay long enough to hear the conversation. I simply walked away. What I never saw was Ethan gently handing the gift back. I'm sorry, he told the student kindly. My heart already belongs somewhere else. The student smiled sadly but nodded with understanding. I never heard those words. I only saw the beginning, and my imagination filled in the rest. The distance between us grew even wider. Soon, Ethan stopped waiting outside my classes. He stopped asking if I wanted coffee. He stopped inviting me to movie nights or football practices. The bright smile everyone on campus loved became noticeably rarer. Even his teammates noticed. Everything okay with Ethan? He hasn't been himself. He's been distracted all week. One Friday afternoon, Coach Daniels ended practice early. Apparently Ethan wasn't playing like himself. I watched from the library window as he walked across the field alone, shoulders lower than I'd ever seen them. For the first time since we'd met, he looked lonely. That night, I returned to our room after midnight. The lights were off. A folded envelope rested on my pillow. My name was written neatly across the front. Inside was a single handwritten sentence. It was never about paying you back. I stared at the note for what felt like hours. It was never about paying you back. One sentence. 7 words. Yet they carried more weight than every conversation Ethan and I had shared over the past month. I barely slept that night. Every memory replayed itself differently. The morning coffee, the repaired headphones, the flowers, the movie night, the smile he always saved for me. Had I misunderstood everything? Or had I been too afraid to believe someone like Ethan Brooks could actually care about me? The next morning, I found his side of the room empty. His bed was perfectly made. His football bag was gone. Only a small sticky note remained on the desk. Championship game. 2 o'clock. Nothing else. No smiley face. No joke. Just those 3 words. For the first time since arriving at Westbridge, I realized how quiet our room felt without him. The championship game attracted nearly the entire campus. Blue and silver banners waved above the packed stadium. The marching band played loudly as students filled every section of the stands. Normally, I would have stayed in my dorm, but somehow, my feet carried me there anyway. I found a seat high above the field. From that distance, Ethan looked exactly as everyone described him. Confident, focused, the captain everyone admired. Yet I was one of the few people who knew another version of him. The boy who quietly fixed broken headphones while everyone else slept. The boy who remembered a single week from 10 years ago. The boy who had chosen one dorm room because he hoped to find an old friend. The referee's whistle echoed across the stadium. The game began. Westbridge started strong. Ethan led every play with calm confidence. Every successful pass brought cheers from thousands of students. Late in the third quarter, the score was tied. The opposing team launched a powerful attack. Ethan sprinted across the field to stop the final play. He reached the receiver just in time. The crowd erupted. Then, he fell awkwardly. The stadium suddenly became silent. He didn't get up. Players from both teams immediately gathered around him. The medical staff rushed onto the field. Without thinking, I was already running. By the time I reached the sideline, trainers were helping Ethan sit up. He noticed me almost instantly. Even through the pain, he smiled. "You actually came." I laughed nervously. "You scared me."
I'm okay.
The trainer interrupted. "Looks like a sprained ankle. He'll need to stay off it for a while." As they helped Ethan toward the tunnel, he looked over his shoulder. "Noah." "Yeah. Will you walk with me?" I nodded without hesitation. "I will." The campus health center wasn't far from the stadium. After the doctor confirmed there were no broken bones, Ethan finally relaxed. We sat together in the quiet recovery room. Neither of us spoke at first. Outside the window, autumn leaves drifted gently across the sidewalk. Finally, Ethan broke the silence.
I'm sorry.
I looked at him in surprise. "For getting injured?" A small laugh escaped him.
No.
He shook his head. "For keeping everything to myself." His voice became softer. "I should have told you the truth sooner." I took a slow breath. "I should have listened before assuming things." He looked confused. "I overheard your teammates." Understanding crossed his face. "You heard the part about me planning the roommate request." I nodded. "And the part about paying back my childhood hero." Ethan sighed. "I figured. I thought." I struggled to finish the sentence. "I thought everything you did was because you felt like you owed me." His expression fell. "Noah, I was wrong." He looked directly into my eyes. "Completely wrong." I waited. "I did ask to be your roommate because of what happened at camp." He smiled gently. "But that stopped being the reason a long time ago." "What do you mean?" He leaned back, carefully against the pillow. "When I found your name on the admissions list, I thought I just wanted to thank you." His smile became almost shy. "But then we started living together. I got to know the person you'd become. The guy who still apologized when someone else bumped into him. The guy who always returned shopping carts. The guy who secretly left encouraging notes inside library books." I blinked. "You noticed that?" "I noticed everything." His answer made my heart race. He continued quietly. "Every day, I realized something. It wasn't the memory I was holding on to anymore. It was you." The room became incredibly still. I wasn't trying to repay a debt. I was falling for the person standing in front of me. I couldn't find any words. For weeks, I'd convinced myself none of his kindness had been real. Now I realized it had been more real than I'd ever imagined. He reached into the drawer beside the hospital bed. "I wanted to show you something." He handed me a worn blue notebook. "My journal." He nodded. "If you're willing to read it. I don't want to invade your privacy. I'm inviting you." Slowly, I opened the notebook. The earliest entries were dated nearly 8 years earlier. Most were only a few lines long. "Another birthday today. I wonder how Noah is doing." I turned the page. "Started high school. Still hoping we'll meet again someday." Another page. "Saw someone who looked like him today. It wasn't him." Another. "College applications this year. Maybe the world will surprise me." My vision began to blur. Near the end of the journal, one sentence appeared again and again. "Every year. Every birthday. Every New Year's Day." every graduation. I hope he's happy. I swallowed hard. There were dozens of entries. Not one complained that I had forgotten him. Not one blamed me. Every page carried the same quiet wish, that I was living a good life. I closed the journal carefully. You wrote all of this? He nodded. I never expected you to read it. I looked at him for a long moment. You spent years hoping I was happy. A small smile appeared. That was enough. I laughed softly through tears. You really are unbelievable.
No.
He shook his head. I was just lucky enough to meet someone kind when I needed it most. I stepped closer to his bed. Ethan, you once told me I was braver than I thought. He smiled. You don't even remember saying it. I don't. I took a deep breath. But maybe it's time I believed it. He looked at me with quiet curiosity. I spent weeks running away because I was scared. I convinced myself you couldn't possibly feel the same way I did. His eyes widened slightly. I was wrong. He didn't interrupt. I don't remember the week we spent together as kids. I smiled sadly. I wish I did. But I do remember every morning we've shared in room 314. Every late-night conversation. Every cup of coffee. Every time you quietly looked out for me. I felt my voice tremble. Those memories belong to us now. A tear slipped down Ethan's cheek before he quickly brushed it away. So, I asked gently, if you had to choose your roommate all over again? He smiled through watery eyes. I'd choose you. Every single time. I laughed. Good. Because I'd choose you too. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I stepped closer. I gently cupped his face in my hands. He searched my eyes, silently asking if I was sure. I nodded. Very slowly, we leaned toward each other. Our foreheads touched first. Then we shared a brief, gentle kiss. Soft, tender, filled with relief more than excitement. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. Neither of us needed to say another word. We already understood. A few weeks later, Ethan's ankle had healed, and life on campus returned to normal. Well, almost normal. People still called him the college's golden boy. Students still stopped him for photos. Professors still praised his leadership. The only difference was that now, whenever classes ended, he walked across campus with me beside him. Rumors started again. This time, neither of us cared. One crisp autumn evening, our friends gathered outside Dorm Hall C for a campus charity celebration. Music filled the courtyard. String lights glowed above the trees. Emily spotted us first. There they are. She grinned from ear to ear. I was wondering how long it would take. A few teammates exchanged knowing smiles. Apparently, everyone had figured it out before we had. Ethan looked at me. Ready. I slipped my hand into his. More than ready. Together, we walked into the crowd. For the first time since arriving at Westbridge, I no longer felt like the quiet transfer student searching for where I belonged. I had already found home. Not in a building, not in a dorm room, but in the person who had quietly chosen me long before either of us understood why. People always said the college's golden boy could have been roommates with anyone. The truth was much simpler. He never wanted just anyone. From the very beginning, he had been hoping for me, and this time, neither of us was going to let that story end with goodbye. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and leave a comment telling us your favorite moment. Was it the secret roommate reveal, the childhood memory, or Ethan's heartfelt confession? And if you enjoy emotional, slow-burn gay romance stories with happy endings, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next love story.